We're not forgetting because we want to understand how we got where we are. We're not forgetting, but we're releasing the hold that it has on us. We're just releasing that hold. I'm Heather Grzych, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrzych.com or on Instagram at heathergrzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. You know when you're not surrendering because there's usually something going on in your body or something going on with another person or something about the relationship between you and the environment around you, that something is out of sync. That's when you know you're not in surrender. So like when your muscles get tight and they're not tight because you lifted tons of weights the day before, you just feel like you're forcing something. You just feel like you're forcing something. So go ahead and sit for a moment here. We'll just go ahead and begin to let the awareness come back into the back of the body. And if you want, you could close your eyes with this so that if you can let your eyes rest and close them or at least dim them and get this sense that your eyes are resting back into their sockets. And actually let the eyes rest back into the sockets all the way into the back of the head. And so that as you bring your awareness into the back of your head, you also bring your awareness into your whole back of your body, your spine, the back of your hips, the back of your legs, the back of your arms, into your entire back body. So just really let your eyes rest back there and let your awareness and your inner gaze, that feeling of your inside spaces of your body, rest in the back of your body. Because today we're going to allow ourselves to be guided a bit more by the heart, by the gut, not by the head, not by the shoulds, but by the true desires of the body. The true desires of the body, which can get confusing because we have these brains that have memory and imagination. So the true desires of your body. So feel your body here for a moment and allow yourself to just feel what is actually there for you right now. I'm Heather Grzych. I'm an author. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. And my big passion is helping people go from feeling disconnected from their animal body to getting deeply in touch with that animal body. And I wrote a book called The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility that was published 2 years ago. And that's being read by women all over the world, thanks to ebooks and Amazon. Thank you, Amazon. I know a lot of people hate Amazon, but I think it's amazing that people can read my book all over the world and it's easy. So, animals, they can't help but be surrendered. And there's a lot of research actually going on in neuroscience to figure out, do animals feel and have emotions and fear and things like that? There's a lot of research going on because we can't ask an animal how they feel. We can't ask them if they run from something. Did you run because you were afraid? We can't ask that animal that. So there's actually a lot of research going on around that because people think if they study the animals that maybe they'll be able to understand themselves better. But I say you just kind of pay attention to yourself and you could skip a whole bunch of other things of having to study things outside of you, because we are an animal. We have this distracting thing though, which is called a conscious mind, but we're animals. And I think a lot of us don't think of ourselves that way. But we're animals. We're mammals. I was just reading this Dr. Seuss book to my kid last night. It's what's a mammal and what things are mammals? And oh yeah, humans are mammals too. Humans are mammals. And the word mammal comes from the mam, the breast, same kind of root. Mam comes from breast because we're the ones that suckle the young, the babies, when they're born, the mammary. So we're definitely animals. And just like all animals are tied to the cycles of the sun and the moon and what's going on in the environment around them with the wind and the weather and everything, so are we. But we have this thing called a conscious mind, and it mixes our awareness with memory and imagination, whirls of the mind, things that take you away from the present moment. And I don't mean to say that they're bad, but they're not the present moment. Not that they're good or bad, but they're not the present moment. So change is the name of the game, though, when you're an animal. Like if you watch the trees outside, if you watch the animals, everything's always changing and moving. And we're this weird sort of species that has decided we don't have to move when the weather turns bad. We just need to invent heating. We just need to, modify the environment to suit us rather than, move with it. So there's maybe some other creatures do that too. They build dens and burrows and things like that. We just have done this to like a very drastic degree. So, but change is the name of the game. We're always transitioning into and out of something in our lives. Sometimes big things and sometimes very small things, but there's always a change taking place. And whenever we experience a change, there is naturally a sense of both loss and gain, even though we might focus on one or the other more. We don't like to feel losses. We like to feel gains. Although anybody who's practiced fasting can tell you that actually sometimes there's a sweetness in the loss. Sometimes there is a sweetness in the loss. And, you don't want your body to like hold on to stuff. You don't want it to hold on to like your pee, do you? You don't want your body to hold on to your poop. So you want things to move through you. You want things to let go. The losses are equally as important as the gains. They're equally as important. You want things to go when they're not supposed to be there anymore. You don't want to hold on to like even these tiny parts of your identity or your routines or your emotions that feed this old iteration of you. Just like you don't want to have like a storage unit pile up too much. So like even when something great happens to you, there's a sense of loss that occurs. I mean, it could even be like right after getting married or when you get a new job. You get something you want, you can even still have a sense of loss. Like think about the postpartum period after having a baby. What happens then? You get this like burst of amazing oxytocin-ness, just amazing burst of gain and love. But then you also get like, have this hollow space in you and you feel loss somehow at the same time. And like people get this, whenever there's a change, there's a gain and there's a loss. They always come together. So even writing a book, I've had this thing where I have a couple author friends and we've talked about how when you launch your book into the world, there's like you go through a postpartum period when that happens, that even though you have this like amazing thing happen, you also have this like weird sense of loss that comes with it. And, if you focus only on the gain, then you're going to be happy, right? Because we like gain. But if you focus on the loss, then you're going to feel sad. But they're actually both happening at the same time whenever there's a change. And then we're sort of like one, or maybe, one is becoming more pronounced than the other. And, like I said, launching a book, it can also be like good things that happen to you when you feel these things, because every change it happens in. So we have to allow our awareness to sit with gain and loss at the same time. So when somebody asks you the question of like, how are you? Don't you just feel like, how can I even answer that, right? When you really have a lot of self-awareness, it becomes a very difficult question to answer because you're more than one thing at the same time. You're more than one thing. You're feeling more than one thing. People in the old world were like, oh, fine, good, great, things are good. So like when somebody asks me that question, I actually freeze up. I'm like, I got this and I got this and I got this. And all the things that I'm feeling start to come up. And so when you're feeling good or bad, or when you're feeling like stress, so stress is normal. Your environment's always changing around you. Stress is actually quite normal, but there's a point where it becomes abnormal. That is distress. That's different than stress. Like, we're always being challenged to rise to an occasion, or, adapt, or our body temperature has to change, or we have to put a sweater on, or we have to move, or the weather canceled the event that we were going to do outside, or whatever. There's always something that's happening. And we adapt to that on a mental level, but also on a physical level. But when we get to the point where we feel like there is distress, where we're having physiological shifts in our body, then that is about us being out of time. So we're either stuck in the past, we're bringing something from our past to the present with us and adding it on, or we're not in the present because we're in the future and we're stuck to something that we want in the future, our desires, our hopes, our dreams, our visions. But being present is actually being a blank slate. Being present is about being a blank slate. So whenever we go into a new phase of something, we have to release ourselves from the previous phase so that we can be present with the current one. And this is even for healing, whether we have to move on from a pattern, or, something we've been trying for a long time that's not working out, or a relationship that is not going right, or just some dynamic that exists between us and another person, or us and something in our environment. If we've been attached to that thing that we're moving on from, then when we move on from it, there may be a feeling of grieving, and a healthy level of grieving that has to take place. So sometimes you can have such great things happen to you, and you could still cry and grieve that you've lost something else, even something else that you may have loved. How unfair is that? We want everything to be black and white. We want it to be good or bad, but it's not, because it's just always changing all the time. And it doesn't mean that the relationship, whatever that is, that relationship with, whether it's you and that beach body you wanted, or you and that relationship that's ending, or you and that baby you wanted, or whatever, it doesn't actually mean that a relationship like it, or that relationship even, can't take on a new form. So sometimes we do have to grieve it so that we can move on. And when that new relationship is formed, when you're present, when you're there, when you've let go of the things that you've been grasping or imagining or whatever, what is left is what is real, what is presently there, not what was there. Not what we thought was there in the past, not what we were holding on to that is no longer relevant. So this is one of the reasons that we always do seasonal cleanses in Ayurveda, because your body can accumulate things from a previous season, because you get certain qualities in a season. You get a lot of heat in summer, right? You get a lot of heat. So it builds and builds and builds. Toward the end of the summer, maybe you're getting inflammatory things or something like that. And then you move into fall, and maybe those things get pacified because it's getting cooler. But maybe they don't. Maybe they stay. Okay. And so that's one of the sort of reasons that we do these seasonal cleanses in Ayurveda. So it's actually our job to respond to the things around us. We're not supposed to be the same way all the time. We don't have to add, unnecessary things to our response in the present moment. And that happens when we can't let go of things from our past. But that's what we want to hunt down in ourselves and get rid of. We want to hunt down those things that we're holding on to, that we don't need to be holding on to. And that could be something good that the mind has labeled good. That can also be something that the mind has labeled bad, like a trauma or something. So we have to let go of the hold that the past has on us, because there's no need to run irrelevant patterns just because we're afraid to experience a grieving for the thing that we wanted or the thing that we had, because as long as we're stuck in that state, we're not going to have direct perception of the present moment. We're not forgetting, because we want to understand how we got where we are. We're not forgetting, but we're releasing the hold that it has on us. We're just releasing that hold. It doesn't have to hold us anymore. If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. I want to thank you for listening to this show. It brings me great pleasure to provide this content to you. I also want to let you know that I'll be making some very amazing announcements soon. And if you're not already on my email list, then I encourage you to go over to my website and subscribe to my email list so that I can keep you informed about these announcements that are going to be coming up very soon. So my website is heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And I look forward to getting these important announcements to you very soon and connecting. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.